corruption and nepotism throughout the Victorian Government has the state on the nose, and WorkSafe Victoria's discontinuation of its investigation into Kaushaliya Vaghela's bullying allegations within Labor raises concern. WorkSafe claims it has used its coercive powers to investigate bodies and individuals, including Premier Dan Andrews and his staff. So we need to ask, why is a decision being made to no longer investigate, and why are Victorians and Vaghela not allowed to know why? Well, joining us as usual is our political editor, Anka Sahin. Welcome, Anka.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good, thanks. Now, it seems Victorians are once again being kept in the dark, and secrecy is the main tenet of this Andrews government. Why do you think WorkSafe won't investigate or won't disclose the reasons behind ceasing its investigation?
The biggest problem appears to be that we don't know. And it's not just that we as the public don't know, but the complainant doesn't know. And that's extremely concerning when you think about the fact that this is a high-profile individual, and Ms. Vaghela is a member of Parliament, and the allegations she's brought against individuals within the ALP in Victoria are serious allegations and certainly deserving of further investigation. For her claims to be dismissed so easily by WorkSafe Victoria when she's a reasonably high-profile individual with some influence within the state, what hope is there for an ordinary person? It's extremely concerning.
The reporting has it that she wasn't even interviewed after she lodged her complaint.
Yes, she's put out a tweet saying, and a statement, basically saying that she was contacted straight away after her complaint was lodged with WorkSafe Victoria. And in that brief conversation, we understand she was advised that there was going to be a meeting and that she would be contacted about that separately. Of course, she, as any reasonable person would, assume that that would be her opportunity to make her case and put forward her side of the story and what her concerns and issues were. And she's saying that the meeting never took place. It just beggars belief that an investigation of this sort would be discontinued without an opportunity being given to the alleged victim to put forward their side of the story.
It places a lot of pressure on someone filling out a form if a written word is going to be the extent of the investigation.
Well, was it? And that's really a question. The brief statement from WorkSafe Victoria tells us very little. They've said that, yeah, we've collected information and we've decided that we won't be taking this further. Now, how are we to interpret this? Does it mean there was some sort of political pressure put on them whereby they were unable to collect as much information as they were hoping to? Or were they stonewalled by the people that they were meant to be interviewing and no useful information could be collected? Or alternatively, were they able to collect some information and then came to the conclusion that because of the gaps in our judicial system that they wouldn't be able to pursue it further through through other channels and avenues? Really, the complainant hasn't been told which of these is the case, and neither is the public. So everyone's in the dark.
And the brazenness of it to not explain, because surely they must know, the famous standard by which we judge so much nowadays, the pub test, to not have to explain yourself, to not have to at least assuage our concerns that it may not have been investigated properly, to offer no explanation rather than any explanation. What does that say about the state of Victoria and the powers that be?
I would hazard a guess and say that it's probably not confined to WorkSafe Victoria. It seems to be a bit of a disease that's taken over many state institutions at the moment, and indeed the government itself. I mean, we've seen that very clearly during the handling of the pandemic, I think most obviously, but in other respects too. There seems to be a serious lack of accountability. We've got reporting that suggests that the Premier and Cabinet have hold disproportionate power with regard to decision making when it comes to what happens in Victoria, and you have a situation where there are allegations of state institutions being stacked by people who are loyal to the ALP, and then of course questions like this arise even when well-meaning people are in those positions and try to do the best they can. When something like this comes out and publicly they're saying, well, we won't be investigating, but we can't tell you why, it just destroys public confidence in not just WorkSafe Victoria, but in other state institutions in Victoria as well.
Yeah, and we currently have the Ombudsman, Victorian Ombudsman, appointing an out-of-state person to oversee an actual investigation into the politicisation of the public service. So there's that little confidence that we can have a independent person oversee this investigation, that they've gone interstate to remove that. That at least gives some appearance of impartiality. But this example of it is just, again, brazen. I can't think of another word than it's sort of, it's a giant middle finger to the rest of the state. Will do as they want, and don't you dare. It's basically hanging the carcass of the fox on the fence. So doesn't matter what you do, we're untouchable.
Yes, look, with the other investigation, again, it all comes down to whether or not the findings of that inquiry into the politicisation of the public service in Victoria, whether whatever findings come out of that investigation or inquiry, whether those findings would be taken on board and implemented, or is it another box-ticking exercise whereby everyone feels good that they've done the right thing, tick the right boxes, and then once the findings come out, there's a little bit of discussion, and then everything gets swept under the carpet as usual. In this particular instance, with the WorkSafe inquiry, going back to what I said in the beginning, I would be so disappointed and concerned if I were the complainant, and having raised these serious issues that based on the things that happened to me, and then seeing WorkSafe Victoria basically not taking those issues further and doing that without even giving me the opportunity to put forward my case. If I were to complain, I'd be fuming.
And let's not forget, as far as you were saying, whether anything actually comes of the investigation, we had the Auditor General find that the Andrews government had spent, I think it was just over $13 million of our money, of taxpayers' money, out of line with the rules and regulations on political spending. And Premier Andrews' response was, well, the Auditor General is entitled to his opinion. Like, at what point do we have a body with teeth or somebody that can hold this man to account?
I mean, and when you think about the fact that we do have an IBAC in Victoria, but even the IBAC, that was the very same body that refused to take further the red shirt scandal. So yes, what hope is there if we have a premier that's basically saying, oh well, the Auditor General has said X, Y, and Z, but we will just ignore that because we can, and no one's going to hold us to account. And you have supposedly an anti-corruption body that refuses to further investigate allegations of corruption referred to them by the Parliament itself. I mean, I can't imagine anything worse.
Yeah, and while we talk about the politicisation of the public service, surprise, surprise, the new head of WorkSafe is an ex-Labor minister, Robert Cameron, just been appointed, held several cabinet positions in the Labor government, and now he's in charge of WorkSafe. And coming up, we have a WorkSafe investigation into the hotel quarantine, where they've had, I think it was 54 charges leveled at them that could total them 94 or 98 million dollars in fines. That just happens, just coincidentally, call me cynical, Anchor, I hate to be a cynic, that is being heard the day after the election, the Victorian election. The perception here, like, what chance do we have? And even if the finding is against them, because as we saw in the Court inquiry, no one could remember who did it. So we've got the ridiculous situation now where the statutory body could impose a fine on the government of 94 or 98 million dollars and say, right, you fined 98 million dollars, hand over. They get it, and then they give it back to the government. Yeah, we've fallen down the rabbit hole.
And how is that going to help with public confidence? And going back to that question of, we mentioned briefly the perception, if not the reality, of various state institutions being stacked by people loyal to the ALP, or people who come straight out of the ALP and being appointed to these bodies. In my view, there's a very, very significant need for an independent body, truly independent, not stacked and not stackable, overseeing these high-level appointments to public bodies in Victoria. That's, I think, regardless of who's in government, we need a structure like that in place. Otherwise, this perception of these high-level appointments being used as some sort of reward for loyal party apparatchiks will never go away.
I'm going to keep going back to the Ombudsman, Deborah Glass, in her findings in the report for the red shirt scandal, where she found that the culture was rotten from top to bottom within the LP. Her statement went something, I'm going to paraphrase here, that even the perception of corruption does as much harm because it undermines confidence in the government, and we lose faith in our institutions. And what I would say to those who are aligned with the ALP, or who ALP loyalists, if we don't stamp this out now, are you going to be prepared when the boot's on the other foot? And because we have that two-party oligarchy, because they control it so tightly, are you going to be happy when it's the Liberal Party that are taking advantage of these less than stringent safeties? I don't think so.
They would say no, but in reality, if you've got a situation where government changes hands every 6 to 9 months at federal level, maybe 9 to 12 months, or 6 to 9 years at federal level, and maybe 8 to 12 years at state level, the thinking behind it is, it's really not ideal, but if we bide our time and just wait, it will be our time to eat soon. And that seems to characterize the apathy and the lethargy, and what leads to basically no action being taken with regard to these serious issues being fixed. And when you said about corruption, yes, corruption is all about perception. We have internationally, you have Transparency International. They put out statistics and surveys on perceptions of corruption and in transparency across different countries, that obviously not state-based, but and it's all based on perceptions. The perception itself that things are getting more corrupt and things are becoming less transparent and more inaccessible is enough to basically fall on those rankings. You don't need actual instances, because actual instances certainly will follow if the perception is there.
Yeah. It leads to that nod and a wink. It's all right if we're all doing it. None of us are going to stand out, and none of us are really going to be held accountable. So it's either we're all slightly on the nose, or we all have to behave. And I think they've gone with, let's all be slightly on the nose.
Look, as I said, the system makes allowances for it. The system allows it to happen. As long as we have the system in place where you know, you have what you refer to as the two-party oligarchy, what I refer to from time to time as the cartel. It's not going to change because you know, things are too good when the power is with you, so you kind of accept being slightly disadvantaged when it's not with you, because ultimately you know that you're going to be back eventually.
Yep.
That's the system at the moment at federal and state level.
Yep. And that's why, again, a blatant plug here, I've put my hand up as an independent to run, because my commitment and my accountability is to my community, not towing the party line and not ensuring the continuation of a snout in the trough. So vote independence, folks. Don't believe the line spilled by the other ones, that it will cause chaos and nothing will get done. What will happen is the community's voice will be heard and not the parties. And that's what we need. So, Anka Sahin, thanks again, and we'll chime in again next week.
Thank you, Michael. More power to you and all the best with your campaign.
Thank you.